ما لهم به من علم ولا لآبائهم كبرت كلمة تخرج من أفواههم إن يقولون إلا كذبا فلعلك باخع نفسك على آثارهم إن لم يؤمنوا بهذا الحديث أسفا إنا جعلنا ما على الأرض زينة لها لنبلوهم أيهم أحسن عملا وإنا لجائلون ما عليها صعيدا جردا أم حسبت أن
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونشكره ونستعينه ونستعينه ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى أهله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, in my khutbah today, inshallah, I want to remind us about the branches and the consequences of Iman in Islam. We all know that faith or Iman is the foundation upon which Islam is based. Iman is the cornerstone of Islam. We know it is the first pillar of Islam, and without Iman, without faith, one cannot actually claim to be a Muslim. But we need to understand the concept of Iman properly in order for it to have the consequences which Allah intends it to have on us. And in that regard, the ulama have identified that Iman, faith, has two main elements. The first element is the internal element. Sometimes people call it the hidden element. And the second element is the external element. That is the seen one. The internal element, the hidden element of Iman are often expressed, and it is expressed in that hadith of Jibril, Sayyidina Jibril, when he came to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ask the Prophet a series of questions. And one of the questions which Sayyidina Jibril asked the Prophet was that he said, "Akhbirini anil Iman." Inform me or explain to me what we mean by Iman. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Iman an tu'mina billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawm al-akhir wa tu'mina bil qadar khayrihi wa sharrihi. The Prophet told Jibril that what we mean by Iman is that you believe in Allah and believe in the angels, believe in the books of Allah and believe in the messengers of Allah. And you also believe in the last day, Yawm al-Akhir, and you should believe in Qadr, the good of it and the bad of it. The ulama indicates that all these aspects of Iman are the internal ones, Iman are the hidden ones. Nobody knows this except Allah. You know, it is in the heart. Belief in Allah is hidden, it's in the heart. Belief in the angels is hidden, it's in the heart. Everybody can say it, but it is in the heart, it is hidden. These 6 elements, you know, as I said, they are between the professor of faith, anyone who says that I'm a believer, and Allah and the Creator. However, faith, Iman in Islam, is not an abstract phenomenon. This is where the external aspect of it comes into the picture. Rather, if we really truly believe, then the consequences have to be open, are meant to be demonstrated in our actual lives. And these are the visible elements. You know, the hidden elements relate to vertical, you know, belief. That is, it is between us and Allah. But the open one, the consequences of this belief is horizontal, between us and the creatures of Allah, and this can be seen all the time. You know, and this is reflected in one hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which the Prophet said, "Al-Iman bid'un wa sab'un aw bid'un wa sittuna shu'ban, fa'afdaluha qawl la ilaha illa Allah wa adnaha imatat al-adha 'an al-tariq وَالْحَيَاء مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ. The Prophet ﷺ said, faith, what we call Iman, has up to 75, or 76 branches, different branches. And he went to say that the highest of this is saying, La ilaha illallah, that is professing that there's no other creature worthy of worship except Allah. And the lowest of it is to remove something that is harmful from the street. You are passing, you see something, a broken bottle that can harm people. You take it away in order not to harm people. Allah doesn't walk through the streets. It is human beings that walk through the streets. Yet the Prophet ﷺ said, removing something that can be harmful on the street. And he said, وَالْحَيَاء مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ. Modesty Or being shy. Modesty, being shy is also part of faith. Now, between these 70, branches or more branches of faith, there are so many categories of other elements of faith which can be expressed, which the Prophet has mentioned in different verses, in different, ahadith. And we also find it in different verses of the Quran. For example, if you look at Surah Al-Hujurat, Surah Al-Hujurat is really very, very important. It teaches us a lot in relation to our character, in relation to how we behave, in relation to the consequences of Islam, consequences of Iman on ourselves. Allah says in Surah Al-Hujurat, Quran chapter 49, ayah 14 to 16, قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا. Allah says the village Arabs, who came to Medina in order to accept Islam, the Prophet gave them shahada, and immediately they said, Amanna, we are believers. Allah says, Qul, tell them, O Prophet, tell them, Lam tu'minu, you have not believed yet. وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا. What you should say now is that you have just submitted to Allah. Because, Allah says, وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانِ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. Because we have just accepted it. The faith has not entered into your heart. It has not had a consequence on you. Its effect has not been seen in your actions. Allah told them, وَإِن تُطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. If you now, the consequences is that you have to demonstrate. If Iman has entered your heart, this should be shown in demonstration, in your actions, in following Allah and the Messenger. And if you follow Allah and His Messenger, la yulitkum min amalikum shay'a. None of your deeds, Allah will not cast any of your deeds away. Because you have accepted Iman now, it must reflect on everything that you do. And Allah will not look away from every deed that you do. Because Inna Allah Ghafurur Rahim. That Allah is most forgiving, most merciful. Allah now says, Innamal mu'minun. Certainly the real believers, those who have accepted faith in their heart, are those alladhina amanu billah, are those who believe in Allah wa Rasulah and believe in His Messenger. Thumma lam yartabu, and they do not have any doubt about everything that Allah has commanded them. They don't receive back. They don't receive back on everything that Allah has commanded them. وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ. And they spend their wealth and their own selves in the path of Allah. فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الصَّادِقُونَ. Those who do this are the true believers. So belief is not only about the internal one saying that I believe in Allah, I believe in the angels, I believe in the books. It must have consequences in whatever we do. Our faith must be demonstrated in our lives. While it is only Allah who knows and can determine the level of our faith, the size of faith can be noticeable through our deeds. Whatever we do, people will be able to judge that is this really a believer in relation to what we do. And the Prophet has indicated this in many, many, many ways. That the consequences of faith must reflect in our statements and it must reflect in our actions. And because of time, I will narrate some to us so that we can use these statements of the Prophet to actually evaluate ourselves, to be able to know whether the faith that we profess, the Iman that we profess, has its consequences in our actions. In a hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Messenger of Allah, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir. The Prophet said, anyone who truly believes in Allah and the last judgment and the last day, these are the parts of the internal, in which in the hadith of the brain, the Prophet said, anyone who truly believes in Allah wal yawmil akhir and the last day, فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. When he speaks, let him speak what is good, or better keep quiet. That's a very important element for you to know. What is your statement? And this relates to what we say by our tongues. The person, everyone who truly believes in Allah and the last day, when he speaks, what should come out of his mouth should only be a good thing, or he should keep quiet. And he went further. He said, وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. And also he who believes in Allah and the last day, فَلْيُكْرِمْ جَارَهُ. Let him honor his neighbor. If you really truly believe in Allah and the Yawm al-Qiyamah, you should evaluate it. What is your character to people who are your neighbors? In that regard. And he said, وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. And anyone who believes in Allah and the last day, فَلْيُكْرِمْ ضَيْفَهُ. Let him honor his guest. So you find out that all this relates to what we say with our tongue and our relationships with people. If you are truly a believer, this must have consequences upon you. When the Prophet said, anyone who believes in Allah and Yawm al-Akhirah, the last day, فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا. Let him say good things or let him keep quiet. The power of words is phenomenal. The power of words is phenomenal. Relationships are built or destroyed by what we say. Relationships are built by what we say, and they are also destroyed. Wars are starting. Destruction can start based on what people say. And peace amongst people are also brokered with the words we say. So Allah making us, people who speak. And this is what the philosophers of Islam, they call it one of the things which Allah has given us, which makes us higher than the animals, is because we can speak. The philosophers, they refer to human beings as al-hayawan al-natiq, that is an animal who speaks. So speaking, it's a great power which Allah has given us. And we should use it wisely in relation to what we say in our statements. And Allah tells us, if you look at Surah Ibrahim, Allah says, "Alam tara kayf?" Don't you see? ضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا. How Allah gives you an example about kalimatan tayyiba, that is good speech. Allah has given you an example of good speech. And Allah says a good speech, كَشَجَرَةٍ تَيِّبَةٍ, is like a good tree that you have planted. أَصْلُهَا ثَابِتٌ. Its roots are firm in the ground. A good one is like a good tree which has been planted and the roots are very, very far. وَفَرْعُهَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. And the branches, are in the skies. You see it. تُؤْتِي أُكُلَهَا كُلَّ حِينٍ بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهَا. And it brings out good fruits for people to survive on by the grace of Allah from time to time. As you plant a good tree and it brings good fruits for people to feed on from time to time by the grace of Allah, that is how your words are. When you speak, when you want to speak, think about it. What is going to be as a believer? What is the consequence of what I'm saying in the life of the person I'm talking to? It was on the news, one guy was just sent to jail. He spoke so many bad words to the mother that the mother committed suicide. It's all on the news. Words are very, very, very powerful. So when we want to say anything, weigh it. Don't say, I don't care, I can say anything I want. The Prophet said you should be very, very careful. Because people will be drawn on their faces, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, into Jahannam because of what their tongues have said. So our beliefs should control our tongues in relation to what we say. The Prophet also said, فَلْيُكْرِمْ جَارَهُ. Let him honor his neighbor. Good neighborliness. Good neighborliness is a consequence of faith. If you have good faith, your neighbor should really feel you as a good person. Actually, your neighbor is your closest ally. A good society starts from and is built on good neighborliness. And Allah tells us, we find in the Quran, Allah says, وَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah truly and don't associate any partners with Him. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and do good deeds to your parents. وَبِالذِّي الْقُرْبَى, and to your relations. وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ, and the orphans and the poor people. وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى, and your near neighbor. وَالْجَارِ الْجُنُبِ, and your further neighbor. This is what the Quran says. He says it's not only enough to worship Allah. When you worship Allah, it should reflect. When you have Iman, it should reflect. And part of it is your near neighbor and your far neighbor. They say, oh, a Muslim lives in number 2. Oh, he's a very good person. Oh, he does very good deeds. Because you are the ambassador of Islam. If your neighbor are not able to really, if they say bad things about you because of how you behave, you need to check your Iman. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا يدخل الجنة من لا يعمل جاره بوائقه. The Prophet said that he will never enter Jannah. Anyone whose neighbor is not safe from his evil act. Anyone whose neighbor fears him, they are not safe from his evil act. Whether they are Muslims or non-Muslims. And the Prophet said that, Mazal Jibreel, يوصيني بالجاري بالجاري حتى ظننت أنه سيورثه. The angel Jibreel, Allah sent angel Jibreel to be warning the Prophet continually about his duties to his neighbor. The Prophet said, angel Jibreel continued to warn me about my neighbor until I thought, maybe one day he will come and tell me that my neighbor has a right to inherit from me. That is how serious it was. What is your relationship with your neighbor? How does your neighbor see you? Yet you say you are a believer. So it's really, really important. It's not enough just for a person to say that I'm a believer, if it doesn't have these consequences on you, as the Prophet has stated. So we need to check ourselves. Iman is higher and stronger than sometimes we talk about. It has so many branches, and it should reflect. People should be able to say, oh yes, oh yeah, I'm not surprised by his behavior. He's a believer. He's a believing Muslim. That is, don't let people say, why is this person behaving like this? And yet he called himself a believer? So it's really very, very important for us to bear this in mind. May Allah make us better Muslims, and may He increase our faith and also improve our character. Ibadallah, astaghfiru rabbakum innahu kana ghaffara. Ibadallah, inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. In the second part of my khutbah, remember the Prophet said also that فَلْيُكْرِمْ ضَيْفَهُ. When you have guests, somebody will have guests, you'll not even be happy. Somebody, when you have guests, whether you have invited them or not, or they are sometimes some people, somebody might say, I'm just passing, I say, let me knock on your door. Receive them with a smile. That is the nature of the consequences of faith. Look at Sayyidina Ibrahim. Allah talked about him in the Quran. When the angels came to visit him, he didn't even know them. He thought they were human beings, but he had never seen them before. The Quran says quickly he brought, meat for them to eat. He said, eat, you are my, all the prophets. This is what they did. They honored their neighbors. So it's really very, very, very important for us to bear this in mind. And lastly, I want to remind us, it's not enough at all when you have faith to think only about yourself. That powerful hadith, the Prophet said, La yu'minu ahadukum. The Prophet said vertically in the negative. Even though you say, I'm a believer, I have Iman. Allah said, the Prophet said, La yu'minu ahadukum. None of you is a believer. Hatta yuhibba li'akhihi ma yuhibba li nafsihi. Until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. He said, you are not a true believer until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. And the ulama hadith have interpreted this. Akhihi here, is usually classified into three. Nasabiyya, your brother from the same womb with you. It's your brother. You have to be good to them. And Adiniyya, and we are all brothers here, even though we are not from the same mother. You have to do good to everyone. And Insaniya, every human being is your brother based on the fact that you are all Banu Adam. You have to do good to them. Some people will interpret it very restrictively. Until you hit by the Akhi here means Muslim brother. No. You know, go and look in the tafsir or on this. It covers everyone, you know, doing good to people, you know, in that regard. So it is the golden rule of life that as believers, we should love for people what we love for ourselves. Giving this clarification, both from the verses of the Quran and also the ahadith of the Prophet Muhammad, makes it particularly fulfilling for us. You know, when we do that, we'll be fulfilling the injunction of Allah that we hear every Friday. When Allah says, "Inna Allah ya'muru bil 'adli wal ihsan wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkar wal baghi ya'izukum la'allakum tadhakkarun." Allah commands you with justice. You know, what you cannot take, don't do it for another person. That is what justice means. You know, when I want to do anything, if I want to receive it, then will I be happy with this? You know? Wal ihsan, good, doing good. Even those who do back to you, doing good to them. You know, waita is a qurba. And remember your relatives. Don't shun them. Don't say, you know, you don't want to see them. You know, وَيَنْهَى الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ, and Allah forbids all vices and all evil acts. وَالْبَغْيِ, and rebellion, Allah forbids it. يَعِزُّكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. Allah remind you so that you can be able to remember what Iman means, what faith means. May Allah make it easy for every one of us, and may Allah increase us in Iman and give us good things, inshallah. We have a few announcements. فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت فإنك سبحانك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك فإنه لا يذل من وعليك ولا يعز من عاديت تبارك ربنا وتعاليت ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وأقم
الذين
الصلاة.
آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات كانت لهم جنات الفردوس نزلا خالدين فيها أبدا لا يبغون عنها حولا قل لو كان البحر